It's the first Monday in October, and that means a new term for the U.S. Supreme Court. Hearings began today on a handful of cases that are being closely watched by Wall Street and American businesses. Hampton Pearson has more on what the justices will be looking at this term and how it impacts business.
The Supreme Court is open for business in spite of the government shutdown. 6 cases on the argument calendar this week, including tomorrow's clash over campaign spending limits. McCutcheon versus the Federal Election Commission is a challenge to the overall limits on individual contributions. That limit is just over $123,000 in a 2-year federal cycle. If the challenger wins, individuals could contribute millions. Meanwhile, the Roberts Court will venture into uncharted territory when justices take up the president's power to make recess appointments. A lower court says President Obama went too far when he named members to the National Labor Relations Board and installed Richard Cordray as the first head of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau without Senate confirmation during a congressional recess back in 2012.
The practical effect, though, is that the court has the opportunity to decide what the recess actually is. Is it any break during a session of Congress, or is it only breaks that are between the enumerated sessions of Congress, which are, typically in December, January of each year?
The power of the Environmental Protection Agency to make rules governing greenhouse gas pollution is on the High Court radar screen. 2 cases focusing on pollution across state lines are on the December calendar. Meanwhile, billions of dollars are at stake as the energy industry and environmentalists clash over current and future EPA power to enforce the Clean Air Act. Former Justice Department Attorney Thomas Lorenzen says it is the environmental issue of our time, with more cases to come.
EPA has been trying to grapple with how do you assess the state's fair share of their contributions to other states' pollution, and how far can you go in making those states address that?
Other high-profile cases include Michigan fighting to preserve a statewide ban on affirmative action at its universities, housing discrimination, government-sanctioned prayer, and buffer zones for protesters outside abortion clinics are all on the argument calendar. The Supreme Court is open for business this week despite the partial government shutdown, but what happens to the court calendar next week is still very much up in the air. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Hampton Pearson in Washington.